Every time you get directions, every time a plane lands in heavy fog, every time a bank records the exact instant of a transaction, the same signal is doing the work. It comes from satellites roughly 12,000 miles overhead. It is free to the entire world, and it is run by the United States Space Force. Global Positioning System, or GPS, is the closest thing the world has to a global utility. It has been broadcasting since 1978. It is the gold standard for position, navigation, and timing, and protecting the standard against a growing list of threats is one unit. Space Force's Space Systems Command, System Delta 831, under Colonel Neil Barnas. System Delta 831 is the acquisition side. It designs, buys, and modernizes the satellites and the ground systems. Its operational partner, Mission Delta 31, flies the constellation every day. That pairing of one team that builds and one team that operates, both pointed at a single mission, is the heart of the reorganization now reshaping how the Space Force fields everything it owns. Position, navigation, and timing is one of the clearest places to watch it work, because the stakes run from a guided weapon finding its target to a farmer planting a straighter row. I'm Bill Woolf, and this is Spacepower. Welcome, Colonel Barnas, to the Spacepower Podcast.
Bill, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Sir, the System Delta construct is relatively new in Space Systems Command. With System Delta 831 standing up just this last October, and last week we started kicking off a special series here on the Spacepower Podcast with your colleague, Colonel Ashby, commander of System Delta 88, or as he likes to say, the Mighty 88. I'd like to kick off our conversation with the same question I posed to Colonel Ashby. Why System Deltas, and how are they changing how you acquire space capabilities?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So this was part of the new approach to both acquisition and operations, where we took some of the aspects that we were doing in acquisition and really putting them with the operational community. Those are what we now call the mission deltas. And we did that for unity of effort for mission readiness. And it was really to make sure that they had all the tools that they needed to deliver space power on a day-to-day basis, and also be thinking about the future for both sustainment and modernization. And then when we think about the system deltas, we did that for unity of effort for capability development. And it was to make sure that system delta commanders like me, I also happen to be a system program director, have all the tools we need, all the finance and human resources and finance system engineering to execute a broad mission area like position, navigation, and timing. And so by giving us all of those resources, we're now able to think much more broadly about our mission area and have a really dedicated partner in this case, Mission Delta 31, who operates the GPS constellation. And so by having those two entities, the Mission Delta and the System Delta, we really cover the range of concept development, acquisition, test, and ultimately transition to operations.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. So now we understand system deltas and the concept and how, again, it allows you to do things much more efficiently. Oftentimes I get the opportunity to talk to school children, high school, grade school, about how critical the Space Force is. And the example I use is, did you use space today? And oftentimes I get, yeah, we did, or no, not really. I don't know is often the response. And I said, did you use MapQuest or Google Maps or Apple device to get to this location today? And they go, yeah, of course I did. I said, did you use Instagram? Absolutely I did. Okay, then you use space. And there's a service that's responsible for that. So in that example where the little blue dot gets you from point A to point B, can you talk a little bit about how important GPS is, where it came from, and why it's so critical to everything we do in day-to-day life?
Yeah, GPS is really an incredible service that the United States Space Force provides really to the entire world. It's a dual-use system. For us, it's really important for our entire military enterprise to deliver precision weapons or get transport aircraft from one place to another, for a dismounted soldier to know where they are on the Earth or relative to their teammates. But even for everyday Americans who are able to receive those signals on their cell phone, it's ultimately what allows them, to navigate, as you said, from one place to another. It ultimately synchronizes the entire internet to work together. Timing is extremely important in the way the internet works. And for the vast majority of those systems, that's provided by GPS. And it's incredible because we've been broadcasting our GPS signal in space since about 1978. Back then, there was a guy named Colonel Brad Parkinson who had to synthesize a bunch of really challenging position, navigation, and timing ideas. People had 5 different ways they wanted to do it. And he was able to bring those ideas into what we call the global positioning system. And he put the first satellites on contract in 1974. And by 1978, they were launched, broadcasting their signal. They demonstrated the ability to support that time ballistic missiles. That was the critical user. But then as soon as that happened, really the floodgates open and people really begin to see the opportunity that exists with GPS. And that's when you got companies like Garmin in particular, who saw the service that GPS provides and said, wow, there's a lot of opportunity here. And from there, they started developing their own handheld devices. And that's ultimately, those technologies are what made it into things like the iPhone and our personal computers that allow us to use the signal in space from GPS to do tasks of every form, again, from everyday Americans all the way through advanced banking features and beyond. So yeah, GPS is just an incredible resource that the United States Space Force provides to the entire world.
Thanks for that background, sir. I really appreciate it. And I think everyone can learn from history about where we are today and where we're going, and to think back to 1979 and go, that's when it all started. I don't think a lot of people understand that. And we hear the phrase gold standard thrown around a lot when it comes to US based position, navigation, and timing. What makes our system the best in the world? And what does it actually take to keep those 31 GPS satellites running against potential threats?
Yeah, that gold standard is really important, really for the United States and the way that we think about soft power and hard power, and the way that we apply, use those services, both again for ourselves economically and then for our overall military construct. What makes that gold standard? One of them is the first one, and probably the most important, is that it provides the most accurate signal of all the other global navigation systems that are out there, like Galileo and Beidou, and more specifically, that it's certified for human flight operations. As you know, the Federal Aviation Administration has incredibly stringent safety standards that is what ultimately keeps us safe and makes our aviation industry the best in the world. And so part of that is what goes into making our GPS signal the most accurate so that it can support those types of operations. The second one is our transparency. We put a significant amount of our technical information on the internet, gps.gov. Anybody from a middle school student all the way to a PhD researcher or an engineer at a company can go out and pull our specifications, our interface control documents, and look at how does GPS work? What are the details of the waveform, the details of our legacy navigation message that's within the waveform itself. All of that is publicly available. And you compare that to some of the other service providers, and it's a little more difficult to find their information. So we really value transparency. And then the third is that we guarantee that service to the world. We produce a document called the Standard Positioning Service Performance Specification. Again, it's out on the internet. You can look at it. That is by law what the United States Space Force will provide to the world. And it talks about the accuracy of our signal, the coverage of our signal, which is worldwide coverage. It talks about our integrity standards, which really means how good is the signal for over time? Is it reliable enough to use for really mission critical applications like aviation or autonomous vehicles? And so those three things are really what allow the GPS to serve as that gold standard for all comparative global navigation systems that are being some that are in operations today, and even more that are being produced by other countries.
Now, let's talk about this month. We saw the launch of the last GPS-3 satellite. Can you share your thoughts on what it took to get here?
Yeah, so GPS-3 is really part of our overall Generation 3 architecture for GPS. Those contracts were let back in the 2008 timeframe. And out of that, we were able to produce we produced 10 satellites. I think the first one went on orbit in 2018, and we've been slowly producing them over time. But what's important about those satellites is that they provide 3x better accuracy than some of our other legacy satellites. It includes a new nuclear detection sensor that we put on orbit that supports our part of our nuclear command control and communications mission for some of our partners. And then just the overall quality of the vehicle is incredible. And that is what really allows us to get to a 15-year design life on these vehicles. It's very likely that GPS Space Vehicle 10, the one that we just launched this past early Tuesday morning, is likely to serve my children for many years and very likely my grandchildren. And that really is a testament to the quality of the satellites that the United States Space Force is able to produce in conjunction with our industry partners like Lockheed Martin, L3Harris, who could really put together an incredible high quality vehicle that serves our country and the world very well.
Sir, let's talk about the future now, GPS 3F. This next generation brings massive improvements and capabilities from GPS 3. If I'm a warfighter deployed in a highly contested environment, what does that upgrade actually mean for me on the ground?
Yeah. GPS 3F, the really incredible thing that it's going to bring to the Joint Force is a new capability called regional military protection. What does that mean? Ultimately, we're talking about a 1,200 kilometer spot beam on anywhere on the Earth where we can apply power up to 63 times higher than our baseline M-code signal. You may know that M-code is our new encrypted military signal. We've been broadcasting it since about 2005. We put it into early use in 2023, and we're broadcasting it to the Joint Force today. And as we put these new GPS 3F vehicles on orbit, starting in the 2028 or 29 timeframe, we're going to start fielding that regional military protection capability and that 63x power high power spot beam, and that will directly support our disadvantaged users like dismounted soldiers, some of our precision guided munitions that were produced by the United States Army, and then ultimately moving into our aviation and maritime platforms who have to operate inside a very challenged electromagnetic spectrum environment. And so as we get more and more of those vehicles on orbit, we'll be able to provide persistent coverages over particular areas of the Earth. And that's really what will unlock persistent PNT over those contested areas for the entire Joint Force.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Yeah, we hear about it a lot. Is the adversaries always looking for opportunities to deny, degrade, disrupt our ability to receive that position, navigation, and timing signal so that we can actually do all the campaign planning and execution that needs to happen wherever our warfighters are at. So it sounds like the new satellite is going to have a much greater power output so that it can get through some of those jamming signals and maybe overcome all of that jamming capability.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sir, Sys Delta 831 sits at the intersection of military need, technological change, and partnerships. How are you thinking about integration with allies, industry, and other mission partners as part of delivering trusted PNT capability?
Yeah, so I'll start first with our mission partners. GPS is absolutely a team sport. I did not appreciate that when I took this job back in August of last year. And then I quickly learned how important it is for our mission partners like NGA, NASA as part of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. They provide critical infrastructure that is absolutely essential for operation of the GPS weapon system overall. In particular, monitoring stations that the NGA has all around the world that monitor our signal from space, provide the data back, allows us to analyze it, find the error in it, and then make corrections. From an industry perspective, yeah, we are very tightly coupled with several of our key industry partners like Lockheed Martin that I talked about. But also, we're thinking about the future. The new space economy provides a lot of opportunity with several companies who are very interested in this mission area, and so we continue to think about what does the future architecture need to be for GPS. Obviously, we are buying GPS 3Fs, and we're going to continue to do so and build those out and start launching them in the 28 timeframe. But we also have to think about what is the future of the mission area from a resilience point of view, from a technology point of view that allows us to be resilient across the space segment, the ground segment, and others. And so that really gets us into talking about allies. There's definitely opportunity, and we want to think about as part of future architectures. Is there opportunity to integrate with allies, and whether that's hosted payloads or sharing common waveforms between the GPS architecture and their own PNT architectures. And then we also got to talk about user equipment. We produce tens of thousands of pieces of user equipment in the United States that we are able to share with our allies. The United States has a memorandum of understanding with 63 different international partners, including many in Europe and really all around the world, that are where we can provide them GPS user equipment that gives them the highest capability PNT signal, our encrypted M code signal, all around the world. And so they are able to take that user equipment and integrate it into their own aircraft or ground vehicles or munitions to support their military. And really what that allows us to do is synchronize the joint force with our coalition allies. Time is always important, but in this case, time is really important from our ensuring we're synchronized in our satellite communications, in our overall network operations. And so being on that common GPS time baseline really improves our ability to integrate with allies. And that's enabled by, by user equipment, by our international agreements. That's ultimately allows us to operate as a really effective coalition force.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I grew up in Yuma, Arizona. I live in Montana. A lot of farming, agriculture across Montana and obviously the plains. Differential GPS. How important is that in providing even a more refined PNT solution so that farmers and the industry can utilize that capability to be more efficient with production?
Yeah. So this is another area that I learned about very quickly as I came on and took on this GPS role. Agriculture is incredibly dependent on GPS, and it really goes to how do farmers maximize the efficiency of the land that they hold. And so services like differential GPS, which monitors the very small errors that we have in our GPS signal and is actually able to provide that error information to user equipment like agricultural user equipment to provide an even finer accuracy to those types of systems, all the way down to 1 to 2 centimeters. And so by using that kind of service, they take kind of that baseline accuracy of the GPS signal, and they can refine it even farther and put it into anything from a high precision tractor, or excuse me, thresher, or any sort of really high precision farming equipment. And again, that allows them to put their crop rows even tighter together, to apply their fertilizers and watering routines in a very precise manner. Um, and so, yeah, it's incredible. This is one of those really key areas where GPS supports our overall economy. In this case, in agriculture, and which is a non-intuitive place to find really high technology. But yeah, our farming community has been really innovative with their industry partners to take advantage of the GPS signal from space and make it even better.
Yeah, thank you for that. I asked Colonel Ashby the same question, talking about integration, and you talked about Sys Delta 831's integration with the mission deltas and the ops deltas. Can you talk about how you're prescribing your team to get involved, whether that's wargaming, tabletop exercises, weapons and tactics conferences? What are you thinking about, again, to help drive the process such that you can have those communication lines between the ops units, mission delta, and your system delta?
Yeah. So actually, Colonel Ashby has been a really great leader in this area in the way that he's really leaned forward in his integration between System Delta 88 and Mission Delta 8. And so I think we're following in some of his path. One of the key things that he's done and that we're echoing is really driving at integration between our young acquisition workforce, both military and civilian, and being able to go out and actually get onto the ops floor, talk with operators, understand the challenges that they have on a day-to-day basis, and the deep capabilities of GPS that they may not appreciate. Second is even things like launch support. This week on Tuesday, we had a number of our System Delta 831 teammates who were at the Cape, as well as at our launch checkout facility at the Lockheed Martin facility, where they were able to be on site supporting launch operations, understanding the dynamics of the vehicle after it was on orbit, and even as of right now, supporting orbit raising operations to put that GPS-3 vehicle into its final orbit. And then the last one is really deeply integrating with our intelligence team. As part of the System Delta construct, we have our own S2, our intelligence personnel. And so we have started to do our own intelligence, our monthly intelligence updates that are very specific to our PNT mission area. And that's been incredibly helpful. We had done intelligence updates as part of the Space Systems Command in the past, and they just didn't quite hit because they were very broad. And so by really focusing on our PNT mission area, our team has learned a lot about the importance of GPS and long range kill chains, the very nuanced parameters of spoofing. We talk a lot about spoofing, but now we can, in a classified environment, we can talk about the different types of spoofing that exists and the different countermeasures that we have. And so we're really trying to push our acquisition teammates to be integrated with operations, to be integrated with intelligence, and then even just being able to appreciate the power, the space power that launch provides, and seeing the fruits of decades of effort that come together in that launch and putting that GPS-3 vehicle on orbit. Yeah, so we're really following well with what System Delta 88 has done, and looking forward to continued integration of our team into that broader ecosystem.
Got it. Sir, I was an aggressor back in the day, and once an aggressor, always an aggressor. I remember one of the things and challenges that we wanted to do to help train our air breathers flying into a contested environment during red flag exercises is deploy GPS jammers and SATCOM jammers. And I remember probably one of the best TDYs or boondoggles that I was able to go on was to the Singapore Air Show, where we were able to actually see countries selling capabilities to other countries that were these spoofers and jammers. So is there opportunity potential to have those acquirers go out, speak with the aggressors, maybe deploy with the aggressors to see kind of that technology that's being used? And I'm sure that's something you're already thinking about, but what are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it's actually one maybe I could have included in my last response, but just thinking about there's a significant amount of navigation warfare testing and operations that occur around the world, and including exercises that occur in the United States and other countries. There's one called NavFest that occurs at White Sands Missile Range on an annual basis. And we do participate in that. We send a team out there with user equipment who is able to actually go out and see the effects of jamming and spoofing on our own systems. Our systems are incredibly sophisticated. Our user equipment has incredible anti-spoof capabilities in it. And so we're able to go out onto the range and actually observe how do our systems perform under really intense jamming, where we're talking about as you may know, the GPS signal basically operates in the noise below the noise floor, and we have very special ways of pulling out that signal. And so jamming creates this really incredible challenge for us to be able to maintain lock on our signals. And then very similarly with spoofing, we have to be able to understand how do those signals interact with user equipment? How are we able to overcome it? And so by having a lot of our test personnel go out into these different events around the country and around the world, One, it allows us to integrate with our joint force allies, or our joint force partners, along with some of our allies, to really understand how do those signals impact us our user equipment at the technical level, and then we're able to bring it back and do the analysis, and then continue to refine the user equipment algorithms to make sure that they continue to operate in a contested environment.
Sir, what about AI? What are you thinking about with AI, incorporating AI into your processes? Is that something that you're waiting for higher headquarters direction, or is it something you're already thinking about in terms of how to start talking about algorithms? One can't help but think, okay, well, as soon as you start saying algorithms, we're thinking AI at some point. So, where does AI fit into the process by which you continue to evolve the capability?
Yeah, no, this is a great area. Like, if we're not taking advantage of AI, we are absolutely losing. So we've got probably 4 initiatives within System Delta 831, and some of them are just administrative stuff. Like, our tech baseline is about 40,000 pages, about 250 documents. It's really challenging to have expertise in that entire volume of data, and so we're developing a tool called ChatPNT, where we're working with one of our industry partners to take our tech baseline and put it into a large language model, to where we can now ask questions of it. You can just ask simple questions. You can ask complex questions. Um, I talked about regional military protection. That individual capability shows up in like 11 different documents, in different ways across space, ground, and user equipment. So it's even just on that one thread, it's very difficult to understand, where does it touch the system? So that's one tool we're using. Another one that I think we're pioneering is about our is to help us with development and coordination of our test and evaluation master plan. This is a large document, about 1,100 pages, that we generate and coordinate with a bunch of our mission partners in OSD, our test and evaluation teammates. And so you can imagine that keeping configuration management of that kind of document is really challenging. So we're developing a tool that allows us to very tightly manage that, understand the trace of different types of or different elements of tests across the different volumes that exist there. And so that's been incredibly helpful, actually, as we've developed future versions of temps. And then the last one we're thinking about is AI and machine learning on spacecraft themselves. We're pushing forward in support of a small business innovative research project that actually puts machine learning algorithms on board satellites to help with autonomous anomaly determination and resolution, right? And so this actually sits alongside the software that's developed by the satellite providers, and it does its own learning on board, and is actually able to identify those anomalies and provide recommended resolutions to operators. And so it's an incredible way to provide a much more responsive determination of when anomalies occur. It helps with users to figure out what they need to do, and ultimately supports the overall reliability of our entire constellation. So yeah, we're really trying to think about AI as we apply it inside the program office, just in our day-to-day operations, along with how do we bring those capabilities into the GPS system overall, and to help with our capability development, our reliability, for our overall system.
Thank you. That's tremendous. Sir, when is your next industry day for those industry partners who want to help? How do they do that?
Yeah. So I think our schedule, so I'll be at the Joint Navigation Conference in June. I'll be at the ION Conference, which is an international navigation conference. And then all of the standard NDIA and space industry events that'll occur through the rest of 2026. Yeah, so we're trying to be active with industry, make sure we're doing plenty of engagement. There's lots of great ideas out there, and we're interested to hear them and figure out how we can integrate those sorts of capabilities into a future GPS architecture.
Sir, if our listeners take just one thing away from our chat today about the vital work your guardians at System Delta 831 are doing, what should it be?
I think that System Delta 831, I'm probably biased. I think we have the most dedicated guardians in the United States Space Force. I work with people every day. I just signed 2 40-year anniversary letters for 2 of our civilian teammates who have been on the program really since for 40 years. There are people that I work with who make deep sacrifices to be a part of this mission, driving extremely long distances, giving up salaries and industry to continue to be a part of our team. And I'm really humbled by that and their dedication to the mission. And it's because they realize how important GPS is to the United States Space Force, to the Joint Force, and to our country. So it's really that, we have a exceptionally dedicated team who thinks every day about how to make the system better, how to solve problems, and ultimately deliver for the country on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Colonel Barnas, the Space Force is relatively new. When you started your military career, you did not start in the Space Force. So as we close out, I'd like to ask you a standard question that we ask many of our Space Force guests, and that is, what advice can you give to men and women considering not just their career in space, but potentially a career in the Space Force?
Yeah. I mean, the easy answer is do it. Do it. I mean, um, I love being a part of the United States Space Force. I served for 21 years in the United States Air Force. I loved my time doing that, working on advanced aircraft like the F-22, the F-35, B-2, other advanced systems. It was an incredible journey being a part of that acquisition team. What I love about the United States Space Force is that we have guardians who think every day on a global scale. On a global scale. Um, we think about these GPS architectures that are operating 12,000 miles away, covering every inch of the globe with not 1, but 4 signals that are used. And um, understanding the impact of that signal in space on users, anywhere from, again, our everyday Americans who are using it as part of on their cell phone, to our commercial industry teammates, and making sure we have the most safe aviation industry in the world, and then really all the way to the Joint Force, and making sure that we're delivering the best PNT signal that we can to support operations like Midnight Hammer, where we went 14 for 14 with massive ordnance penetrators. Um, it's difficult to think of another mission area that really provides that global capability on a day-to-day basis, with the degree of accuracy, integrity that we provide. So really bringing it back to the United States Space Force is an incredible place to work. And whether that's as a military teammate, a civilian teammate, a contractor, we need great folks who want to think at a global scale to help us deliver capability, as quickly as possible.
Sir, Colonel Barnas, delivering the gold standard for PNT globally at System Delta 831, sitting there as a commander. I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us here at SFA. We look forward to seeing you in the future and at the Spacepower Conference.
Bill, thanks very much for your time. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Looking forward to seeing SFA and the Space Force continue to grow.
When people call American GPS the gold standard, it can sound like marketing. It's not. It rests on 3 things anyone can check. The signal is the most accurate of any global navigation system, accurate enough to be certified for human flight. The specifications are published in the open, where a middle school student and a rival nation's engineer can read the same documents. And the level of service is guaranteed to the world by law. That openness is a deliberate act of soft power. It is also why the threat cuts so deep. An adversary that cannot out-engineer the signal will try to drown it out with jamming or counterfeit it with spoofing. The answer is already climbing toward orbit. The next generation of GPS satellites will be able to focus a beam of far greater power onto a contested region, punching the signal through the noise where it is needed most. Getting there takes more than satellites. It takes the international agreements that put American receivers into allied vehicles, the user equipment engineered to reject a fake signal, and increasingly the artificial intelligence now digesting tens of thousands of pages of technical data faster than any human team could. The newest GPS satellites reached orbit only weeks before this conversation, and it got there only because the team made a late decision to move it from one rocket to another and then launched it at a fraction of its usual time. Building a satellite is one mission. Getting it to space on demand is a different one entirely, run by a separate unit under its own kind of pressure. More on that soon. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the show and share it with a friend or colleague. Get involved. Become a member of SFA today at ussfa.org. One of our most exciting initiatives this year is the announcement and establishment of the National Spacepower Center. If your company wants to help create an immersive environment so that we can educate far more people about how critical the space domain is, go to ussfa.org and under Programs, select on the National Spacepower Center. It's a great way to get involved. Spacepower is produced by Ty Holliday. I'm Bill Woolf. We'll see you next time.